So many people in the world haven't even recognized the source of energy that they're connected to. That in the atmosphere around us, there is an abundance of spiritual energy. That same energy runs through every living being in this world. Only most people are asleep to that wonderful inner flow of natural spiritual energy. For me, I woke up, probably in my childhood. I knew that there was something else happening to me. I knew that there was an energy more than just my physical body. I knew that there was an electricity, a spirit, if you like, that moved through me, that gave me a different sense of self, a sense of mindfulness even. And this is something that has stayed with me all my life. And because of that, it brings about a more balanced mind. My mind becomes balanced because the things of this world are only so important. I know that there's a bigger world out there, and that's what makes my life so happy, so balanced, because I have tapped into that flow of energy, and that flow of spiritual energy works through me and with me. In what I do, I meet so many people who are broken. They are sad, they are frightened, and working with my spiritual energy, that flow can move through my being into their being and jumpstart them. That can bring them back into their flow, the flow they lost because of negative human emotions. You see, there's nothing nicer than to know that you are not alone in this world, that you are connected to every living being. And the moment you open up your mind to that inner flow, you realise that everything that is alive is part of you. You realise that you can't really hurt anything when you know this, because to hurt another being would hurt you. But you only know this because the same flow of energy that comes through you moves through every other living thing on this planet and this universe. There's something wonderful about being open, about being in touch with that wonderful higher consciousness. Something amazing happens to you because all of a sudden you're no longer limited to a human body and 5 limited human senses. You have this extra sense, a sense of everything, a sense of a reality that most people can't even dream of. That when you look at nature, you don't just see trees and plants and water, you actually feel a part of it. That you become very zen, that your mind is just as alive as what you once thought was invisible in the air and atmosphere around you. This is something that I would love more people to open their mind to. The fact that there's life in the air, the fact that there's love everywhere, if you only can open your heart and mind to find it. In my work, I have to touch so many broken hearts because people have had a loss. I have to heal people who feel that their life is over. And I see this broken human side of us, and I just want to fix it. This is something that when you're in the flow, it will be natural for you to build an amount of compassion in your life. You see, the flow works through us better when we start to find compassion. Once we start to feel a sensitivity towards other people's needs, then we are opening our mind to that spiritual flow. Once we want to make people better and heal the sick, we open up our mind and our heart to that flow. Anything you do of a spiritual nature will only add to your own spiritual energy. It will just increase your flow. And every time you use it for the good of another person or another being, you just become more expanded yourself. In this world where things are kind of dark at the moment, there's so much bad news on the television. There's so many people limited by fear, scared to live another day, frightened for their children, frightened for their future. And this is why we need to get back to the old things. Being in the flow is an old way. It's something the ancients did. Way back, long before man even thought they were civilized, the ancients worked with nature. And that flow I talk about comes from nature. This has passed down through generations and generations of tribal people, of shaman, and nowadays of people like myself, mediums, healers, channels. And that's what we're working with. The flow of energy has never changed. It's still the same flow. But as man has grown and actually not paid respect to the world in which he lives, it's time for people to come into this world, if you want to call them light workers, and they are born with an openness to the flow. And these are the people that will stand out. These are the people that others will look to for brightness in their life when the world becomes just too dark. That's what's happening right now. So if you're in that flow, or you're looking to take away some of the hurdles and barriers in your life, then look no further than yourself, because in you there is a divine spark. That divine spark, you just need to wake up, and the moment you do, your light body will expand, and you'll look for the flow, and naturally you will find it. I would love to see more and more people wake up and smell the karma. Wake up and actually look at their lives and realize, what am I doing? Is that all there is? Is this all there is to me? No, it isn't. There's actually so much more to you if you get into the flow. You know, people are very often looking for answers in things like religion, books of truth, philosophy. I'm starting to believe that people can actually find the answers to all of life's and the universe's problems and mysteries within themselves. But you first of all have to unlock the door of your own soul. The door of your soul has to be open to another world. You need to learn to walk between worlds, to appreciate that there are more than one dimension of reality. And the moment you can open up the door of your soul, it gives you access into a bigger world. This is the world where people like the Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, all sorts of great teachers like Socrates, Plato, Confucius, Lao Tzu, these people weren't just people who were enlightened. These people were actually living spiritual beings. They were people who their mind was too big for just this human world, that they extended into other worlds, and they brought back truths. They brought back answers that gave people some kind of mindfulness and understanding as to the pathway of life. This is the kind of work that I would love to see more people do now, is opening their soul, looking inside themselves. And don't be afraid. You see, people have been afraid for so long to look inside themselves. They're frightened that they might find things that they've locked away since their childhood. Some are even afraid to look in case they find problems from a previous life. Well, the moment you start to open up the doors of the soul, you clear out the dark rooms of the mind. It gives you the opportunity to take control back, because you are in that natural flow of spiritual evolution. That natural flow of spiritual evolution is something that every man, every woman, every child can investigate. It's something that can take you to a whole new understanding of self. You see, self is not small. Self is not just a human being. Even as we live in this world, there's also a part of us in the higher world, in the spirit world. So we actually already coexist. So the moment we can understand that we are not just body, but we are actual consciousness, and it's consciousness that fills the body, but the same consciousness already exists in the higher world of the spirit. So that the fact that when we die, we don't actually die, we just step out of a body and we return back into the flow of energy that is spirit. And that same flow is the thing that moved through us when we were using a body. You see, we borrow this body, we borrow this life, and we do that because we can. And the moment we understand that, things like death and dying are no longer such a big problem. Something happens when you're in the flow that tells you that if you can actually lose your fear of death, you can lose your fear of life. So if you can lose your fear of dying because you're in the flow, you can actually lose your fear of living. And that is the state that people really want to aspire to. Not just to live in this life, to understand that you are bigger than just a human being, that you are a living spirit being. You have been before you came here, and you will be again when you leave the body. People in this world seem to limit themselves because of fears and anxieties. But the moment you realize, hold on, this is impermanent. These anxieties and fears, they only last this lifetime. And they might not even last that long if I open my mind, get into the flow, and be connected to my own higher being in the spirit world. The moment you do that, you see this life as a small life, something you look down on and realize, well, that's only going to be like a flicker, and then it's over, and I'm back in my higher consciousness again. When you know that, then you can actually prepare to come back to this world. Because so many people end up in a mess in this world because they just keep going round, repeating the same patterns. And they are actually going against the flow. When we go against the flow, all we get is trouble and chaos. Once you get into the flow, this is something that the old masters of Tibet and China and the old days when they were great places of philosophy, they taught us this. Go with the flow. Don't walk against the river. It will kill you. Not because it wants to, because it has to.